We install Ring cameras to feel safe. A digital eye that watches over our homes while we sleep.
Imagine waking up to a notification at 3 in the morning, the witching hour.
There is something uniquely terrifying about the Ring doorbell camera. It was designed to make us feel safer. Digital eye that never sleeps, allowing us to see who is at our door without ever having to open it. But sometimes, that sense of security is shattered by what the camera actually records. From masked strangers standing silently in the dark to desperate pleas for help that vanish into thin air. These devices have captured moments that were never meant to be seen. They remind us that the barrier between our safe, warm homes and the dangers of the outside world is much thinner than we think. Here are 7 disturbing moments caught on Ring cameras. Story 1. On the night of November 22, 2019, in the quiet neighborhood of Harriet Creek Ranch, Texas, a motion sensor was triggered at a front door around 8 p.m. The resulting footage is less than a minute long, but it has haunted the internet and law enforcement ever since. The video shows a young girl emerging from the darkness. She looks to be in her late teens or early 20s, holding what looks like a broken pair of handcuffs, or possibly a lanyard in one hand. She isn't wearing a coat, despite the chill in the air, and she looks absolutely terrified. She approaches the door, rings the bell, and then immediately turns around to scan the darkness behind her, as if she is being hunted. Tragically, the homeowners were away on vacation. The notification popped up on their phones miles away, but by the time they saw the alert and checked the feed, the girl was gone. She knocked softly, almost afraid to make too much noise, and when no one answered, she disappeared back into the night. She didn't go to the neighbors. She didn't scream. She simply vanished. When the homeowners returned and reviewed the footage, they were chilled to the bone. They didn't know the girl. None of the neighbors recognized her. The police were called, and a massive search was launched, but there was no trace of her. It was as if she had evaporated. The mystery deepened when the footage went viral. Thousands of people weighed in with theories. Some believed it was a setup, a tactic used by home invaders, where a distressed woman lures the homeowner to open the door, only for armed accomplices to rush in from the shadows. But experts and viewers alike pointed out the sheer raw panic in her eyes. It didn't look like acting. It looked like survival. A more heartbreaking theory emerged involving a missing 9-year-old girl named Serenity Denard. Serenity had run away from a youth treatment facility in South Dakota 9 months prior, in February of 2019. Despite a massive search effort involving 1,200 people, she was never found. When the Texas footage surfaced, many people pointed out the striking resemblance between the girl in the video and an age-progressed photo of Serenity. The theory was that she had been abducted, held captive for months, and had finally managed to escape, fleeing to the first house she saw. However, Serenity's family reviewed the footage and stated they did not believe it was her. The girl in the video appeared older and taller. Yet, without an identification, the theory persists in the darker corners of the web to this day. 6 years later, the girl in the video remains unidentified. Was she a victim escaping a captor? Was she a runaway in trouble? Or was she bait for a trap that never sprung? We may never know. But the terror in her eyes is something you don't forget. Story 2. On the morning of July 31st, 2022, in Sydney, Ohio, 22-year-old Allison Duckrow and her mother had just returned home from breakfast. It was a bright, sunny morning. Just before 11 a.m., they walked into their house, locking the door behind them, unaware that they were being followed. Moments later, a car pulled into their driveway. The Ring camera recorded a young man stepping out. Allison recognized him immediately from the live feed on her phone. It was James Rail, her ex-boyfriend. They had broken up 18 months earlier and hadn't spoken since. But the night before, James had left her a chilling, rambling voicemail. Audio, clip simulation, stuttering, nervous male voice, because I just wanted to see how you're doing, and maybe hear from you, if that would be all right. I guess, it's been a while since I've talked to you. I do know that I do want to talk to you though. It'd be nice, be sweet. Allison hadn't replied. She hadn't given him permission to come over. Yet, here he was. Allison told her parents. He was there and decided to ignore him, hoping he would just leave. James stood on the porch for 3 agonizing minutes, ringing the bell and waiting. When no one answered, his behavior shifted from hopeful to predatory. He left the porch and began circling the house, checking windows and back doors, looking for a way in. When he found everything locked, He returned to the front door. This time, he didn't ring the bell. He started slamming his shoulder against the wood dot inside. Panic set in. Allison's father retrieved his firearm as James grew more violent, shouting and throwing his entire body weight against the door. The wood frame began to splinter. He was breaking in. Allison's father shouted warnings, but James refused to stop. He finally managed to force the door open, stepping across the threshold into the home. Allison's father fired. The confrontation ended seconds later. Police arrived to a chaotic scene, but the doorbell footage told the entire story. It showed a man who had been given every opportunity to leave, who chose instead to hunt his ex-girlfriend in her own home. Thanks to the clear video evidence of James's relentless attempt to break in, Allison's father was acquitted of all charges on the grounds of It's a stark reminder that sometimes the only thing standing between you and a violent intruder is a locked door and the will to defend it. Story 3. Imagine waking up, checking your phone notifications, and seeing a message from your doorbell camera. Person detected at 3:33 a.m. On January 18, 2025, a homeowner in Carrollton, North Texas, experienced exactly that. She was out shopping when the notification came through, but when she opened the app, she froze in the middle of the aisle. Standing on her porch was a figure, dressed entirely in black, but it was the face that made her blood run cold. The person was wearing a bright red demonic goat mask with hollow black eyes and curved horns. The figure stood perfectly still for a moment, staring directly into the camera lens, holding a cardboard box. He then stepped forward, rang the doorbell, and turned to walk away. But before he left, he placed a sign on the doormat. The sign read, Revelation chapter 20 verses 1 to 15. For those unfamiliar with the Bible, that specific passage describes the binding of Satan, the final judgment, and the lake of fire, where the damned are tormented day and night forever. The homeowner was terrified. She called the police immediately, but when officers arrived, they hit a frustrating legal wall. The man hadn't broken in. He hadn't damaged property. He hadn't physically threatened anyone. Technically, standing on a porch in a mask isn't a crime. I'm scared, the homeowner told reporters later. I'm scared to leave the house. I'm scared to be at the house. The footage ends with the masked figure walking calmly down the driveway, disappearing into the suburban night. Was it a prank? A religious extremist? Or someone marking a target? The story vanished from the news cycle, and the identity of the goat-masked stranger remains a mystery. Story 4. On July 21, 2023, in Dudley, UK. Two elderly women grew concerned when they hadn't heard from their friend, 58-year-old Sharon Gordon. They went to her home to check on her dot. When they entered, they found a scene from a nightmare. Sharon was lying face down at the bottom of the stairs, battered and covered in blood. She had been brutally attacked. Police arrived and declared it a homicide. With no witnesses and no forced entry, investigators turned to Sharon's Ring doorbell camera to retrace her final hours. The footage showed her contractor, a man named Peter Norgrove, arriving earlier that day. Sharon had hired him to build an extension on her house. The project had been a disaster. 15 months of delays, excuses, and shoddy workmanship. The camera captured Peter entering the house, looking calm. Hours later, it captured him leaving. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Peter claimed that Sharon was fine when he left, but detectives noticed something chilling in the video. As Peter walked down the driveway to his van, there were dark, wet stains on his trousers that hadn't been there when he arrived. Blood. Police raided his home and found the clothes he had worn that day, still stained with Sharon's blood. In his shed, they found a lump hammer, the weapon he had used to take her life. Confronted with the evidence, Peter confessed. He admitted that Sharon had criticized his work that day, and he had snapped. He attacked her in a fit of rage, then calmly walked out the front door, unaware that the camera above his head was documenting the evidence that would put him away for life. He was sentenced to life in prison, a fate sealed by the silent observer mounted on the doorframe. Sound of glass breaking. Story 5. On October 6, 2024. In Fresno, California, Kristen Paul was sitting on her couch watching TV. It was just after midnight. Her husband was working a late shift, and she was waiting for him to come home. The doorbell rang. Assuming it was her husband who had forgotten his keys, Kristen unlocked the door and swung it open. Standing there wasn't her husband. It was a woman she had never seen before. Her hair was wild, her eyes wide and manic, and she was muttering to herself. Kristen's instincts kicked in immediately. She slammed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. That's when the woman snapped. The Ring camera captured the stranger screaming, pounding on the door with her fists and throwing her body against it. "Let me in," she shrieked. "Let me in right now." When the door wouldn't budge, the woman ran to the side of the house. Kristen heard the sound of a window screen being ripped out. Kristen retreated to the bedroom, called 911, and armed herself. She could hear the woman trying to force the window open, growling like an animal. Thankfully, Fresno police were nearby. An officer arrived within minutes. The bodycam footage shows the officer rounding the corner of the house, gun drawn. The moment the woman saw the police, her demeanor changed instantly. The screaming stopped. The aggression vanished. She put her hands up and surrendered without a fight, as if the last 5 minutes of violence had never happened. Kristen later said, "I'm just thankful the officer wasn't a minute later. If she had gotten through that window, I don't know what I would have done." Sound of fire crackling, Story 6. August 12, 2025. Midlothian, Texas. The Wilson family was sound asleep. At 1 a.m., their 21-year-old daughter Malia woke up. She didn't know why at first, maybe a noise, maybe a feeling, but then she saw an orange glow dancing on her bedroom curtains. She ran to the window and looked down. The front yard was on fire. She screamed for her father, Daryl. He bolted out of bed, grabbed the phone, and called the fire department while running outside with a garden hose. The flames were licking at the siding of the house, inches from the windows. Firefighters arrived quickly and doused the blaze before it could consume the home. Once the smoke cleared, the family checked their Ring camera to see how the fire had started. The footage was sickening. It showed a figure dressed in a dark hoodie and mask, walking casually up the driveway, carrying a red gas can. The person proceeded to pour gasoline all over the front porch, the bushes, and the siding of the house. They took their time, ensuring the accelerant covered everything. Then, the figure lit a match, tossed it, and sprinted away as the yard erupted into a wall of fire. Daryl Wilson watched the video with a sinking feeling. He believed he knew the motive. He had recently filed a lawsuit against a former employer, and tensions had been high. He suspected this was retaliation, an attempt to burn his family alive in their sleep. Despite the footage and the suspicion, the arsonist was covered head to toe, and police were unable to make a positive ID. The attacker is still out there. The Wilson family now sleeps with one eye open, wondering if the person in the hoodie will return to finish the job. Story 7. In June of 2023, Instagram model Gust Genesgate began noticing odd things around her home. Objects in the yard were moved. Strange noises outside her window at night. Her mother checked the doorbell camera footage and found something disturbing. An unknown man had been coming to their house repeatedly. The footage showed him lingering at the edge of the property, staring at the house. In some clips, he walked right up to the windows, cupping his hands against the glass to peer inside. They called the police, but the response was the usual frustration. "He hasn't broken in, so we can't do anything. Call us if he comes back." Terrified and unable to sleep, Gus decided to take matters into her own hands. She set up a primitive alarm system, a tripwire made of rope, strung across the yard, attached to cans that would rattle if disturbed. A week later, at 2 a.m., the cans rattled. Gus grabbed her phone and checked the live camera feed. The man was there. He had tripped over the rope but kept coming. He was now standing directly outside her bedroom window, his face inches from the glass, staring into the darkness of her room. She screamed for her mother. Her mother ran into the room and banged on the window, startling the man. He turned and ran into the night. Neighbors later reported seeing the same man peeping into other homes on the street, despite having clear footage of his face. Police were unable to identify him. Gust and her mother didn't wait for him to escalate. They packed their bags and moved out of the house a few days later. To this day, the stalker has never been caught. Story 8. Finally, we have a story from Alexandria, Virginia, that feels like a scene from The Purge. It was late October, close to Halloween. A family was sitting in their living room around 10 p.m. when the Ring doorbell chimed. Shayla, the daughter, checked the feed. Standing on the porch were 3 figures. They were wearing full Halloween costumes and masks. One looked like a clown, another like a ghoul, assuming it was a late prank or teenagers looking for candy. Shayla opened the door slightly and said, "Happy Halloween." The figures didn't say trick or treat. They didn't speak at all. They just stood there, staring at her through the plastic eye holes of their masks. Shayla slammed the door and locked it. That's when the assault began. The trio started banging on the door, shaking the handle violently. "Open the door," one of them shouted. "We know you're in there." When the front door held, they split up. The camera captured them moving around the side of the house. They slashed through the wooden fence to get into the backyard. Minutes later, The family heard the sound of glass shattering. The intruders had smashed through the screen door on the back deck and were now pounding on the sliding glass door, inches from where the family stood. "It's either you coming out or we coming in," one of them screamed. The family huddled in the hallway, calling 911, listening to the masked strangers circling their home like wolves. The ordeal lasted for 10 agonizing minutes before the intruders finally fled into the night. Just before police arrived, the family was so traumatized that they packed their bags that night and went into hiding. They never felt safe in that house again. The police launched an investigation for attempted burglary and criminal threat, but the masked figures disappeared as quickly as they had arrived. These stories serve as a chilling reminder. A camera can show you the monster at your door, but it can't always stop them from getting in.